Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's web event, ERP Success Factors. My name is Steve, and I'll be your host today. As we get started, I just want to remind you how you can participate in today's web event. You should see something like this on your own screen. If you have questions while we present today, just type your question into the GoToMeeting question pane, hit send, and then at the end of the presentation today, we'll read all of your questions and answer anything that you submit to us. Very happy to be joined today by Dave Woodworth. Dave is the president at Terillium. So Dave oversees all of our operations, including all of our ERP implementation projects. Dave will lead our ERP Success Factors discussion today. I'll quickly introduce the company Terillium in case you haven't met us yet. We're an ERP consulting firm. We specialize in implementing enterprise resource planning projects for our customers. Now, those projects can be risky if they're not performed properly. So Terillium is very proud to have won many awards for our implementations. Prior to yesterday, we had 15 excellence awards. We won another award this week, which brings us up to 16. We're very proud of these awards, particularly the Best Customer Success Story Award. We have a mantra that comes from our CEO that we're only as good as our last reference. So when we win awards for these implementations that can be risky, if not done right, we think that says we're doing our job well and have very experienced consultants who know how to perform these projects and follow a methodology that's been proven to work for our customers. We do have about 170 full-time consultants that work directly for us. They're not subcontractors. They're very experienced with both ERP and processes in your industry. And we cover the entire United States and have international capabilities as well. We developed this ERP Comparison Web Series to help companies like you who might be considering new ERP systems. As I've said, that can be kind of a risky process, and the journey to select an ERP package can be a daunting one. We thought this series would be a great way to make that more successful and a little easier on you. So far this week, we've talked about getting the maximum ROI from your project. We've seen demos from NetSuite, ERP Cloud, and JD Edwards, 3 different ERP packages. And obviously this afternoon, we're talking about project success factors. So now I'd like to pass the presentation over to Dave Woodworth. As I said, Dave is our president. In his role as our president, Dave has overseen more than 500 ERP implementations. So he's definitely seen the good and the bad, and he produced this presentation to help companies like you who might be thinking about a new ERP project to help you understand what you can do to make sure that your project is successful. So Dave, thank you very much for joining us today. We're excited to learn more about ERP success factors.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. Welcome, everyone, and good afternoon. Steve asked me to present this, and I present it to prospects and clients throughout the year. And I also present this at universities in some ERP classes. And you know, I've seen a lot of good, bad, and ugly when it comes to implementations. And over my years of doing this, I figured it made sense to build a presentation to kind of go through some of the key success factors. This presentation is a subset of the larger presentation. So we'll go through some of the highlights of the success factors, and then at the end, be happy to answer any of your questions. So first, I usually like to group the success factors into 3 broad categories. And if you were on campus, this slide would be important and would be on your final exam. I group them into technology, people, and processes. So we'll walk through some of those in each of those areas. If we start with the technology, the first thing that we like to say is, you know, ERP software is a business tool. it's not going to cause failure by itself, and it's not going to ensure success. You'll hear different horror stories out there that say, my project was a failure because of the software. The software didn't work. And many of the packages that you've looked at this week, some of them have thousands and thousands of customers that have successfully implemented the product. Many of these tools have been around for decades in many cases. And so what we like to look at is the software is just a tool. It's not going to cause you to fail, and it's not going to guarantee success. You have to have a implementation plan and strategy and have a lot of these success factors in place. Another technology that people don't talk about, and it's one that I really harp on, is you need to start on these activities very early on the project. Data conversions, integrations, and reports. And I like to focus on really the data conversions for this presentation. One of the things that we find are that our clients' data is not always in the best shape. Either it's not valid, it's corrupt, or they're missing data. And to get data into a new ERP is not like just pushing a button and it magically comes over. There's a lot of work. In fact, I would argue that the data conversion task is probably one of the largest, most complex tasks on an ERP project. We had a client that was a manufacturing client, and I gave this presentation to the exec team before the project, and they said, "We get it, Dave. Our data is clean. We will not have any issues." And as we get into the project, we obviously have to start converting data. And one example was customers. Everybody has customers, and we had to bring those over into the new ERP. So I said, "Could you give us a download of all your customers?" And they gave us an Excel file, and we started looking at it. And in the file, we noticed that Walmart was on there 35 times. Now, this was not 35 different ship-tos. It was 35 parent company Walmarts. And over 30 years of their old custom system, they had entered Walmart 35 times, spelled differently. Walmart, all one word. Walmart with one L. Walmart with two L's. Wal-Mart. And they quite honestly could not determine which one was really the real Walmart. So I told them, I said, "We can't just bring over 35 garbage customer masters. We really have to clean this up." So that's really the point of this, is there's a lot of cleanup that has to happen, and you should be doing that before you even start the project. That's just one example. I've got a lot of different examples with data conversions. But I can tell you on every project, we always run into some issue around the data being clean or missing data. So if we jump into the people aspect, obviously ERP doesn't implement all by itself. You need to have people involved, and that would include your own people as well as any outside assistance. So I'm going to go through some of the key success factors to make sure that you build the right team. The first thing is, as I said at the very beginning, is that ERP software is a business tool. So with that being said, the project really should be owned by the business. We see almost 90+% of the time where the project is owned by IT. And while IT plays a critical role on the project and after the project, we don't typically see IT people entering sales orders or entering purchase orders or entering a journal entry. Those are the business people that are doing that. And so this is a business system. We really push to have this be owned by the business. IT, as I say, plays a critical role in supporting the project, and obviously instrumental in a lot of the technical roles of conversions and interfaces and reporting and so forth. But it should not be the sole people on the project. The goal of our clients and of yourselves should be, we want to create internal experts so that we're not reliant on outside consulting firms or outside software providers to forever provide support, firsthand support to the product. So for you to become an expert, you have to participate on the project working with the experts. Some key roles on the project. We love to see what we call a project sponsor from the client, and this is the person that overall owns the project. Again, you'll see a common theme with some of these slides, but we would push that this should be a business executive. What we have seen on our clients could be the CFO, the COO, we've seen the president and CEO of our clients. The key is this person has to be trusted, respected, and be able to make the final decisions. There are going to be a lot of issues that happen on these projects. So if anyone tells you that, oh, we'll have no issues, everything will be fine, they're not telling you the truth. There will be issues, and we need to go to that one person that can make the final call on some tough calls. While the consulting firm will provide a project manager, it is important that the client also provides someone that plays a project management role. You know, we do find that a lot of our clients don't have expertise in managing large-scale projects, but that's where they can leverage the consulting firm with the knowledge of how to manage large-scale projects. But why we need a project manager from the client is none of the employees at the client report to the consulting firm. So I can't go tell the AP clerk, I need you to come down here for 2 hours and do this. I need you to work an extra hour here to complete this task. I need someone internal that can help drive that. Again, we'd like to see this project manager be from the business. It's typically a pretty heavy role in terms of dedication to the project. And again, this person should be respected because you're going to have a lot of different people from different departments on this project, so you need someone that people do respect. You need to have executive buy-in from the client. These projects are, on many cases, one of the largest investments that they make besides doing acquisitions or buying a big piece of equipment for the shop floor. These typically are very large investments. So we think it would be important that the executives are involved. That doesn't mean they're involved on an hour-by-hour basis, but they need to provide support and buy into the project. I had a client where they signed a contract to implement a new ERP, which was signed by the CEO. And through the 12-month project, not one time did we ever see any of the executives involved on the project. And what ended up happening is that project went over budget and over time because no one was there to make tough decisions and resolve key issues. They just left it up to the lower level people to implement it, thinking that they could get it done. And we ran, there were issues, and we just had no visibility with the executives. So it is very important. Obviously, the consulting firm is going to provide resources to help implement the software, but the client needs to provide core team members that work with your consulting partner. And it's very important that you provide adequate time to the project. And each ERP has probably some differences in terms of commitment of time. I can tell you what the ERP packages that we implement, we typically will see anywhere between 30 and 60% commitment of time. the core team members, and you see it's members, not member. This is multifaceted across, all departments depending on what you are implementing. So you can't just give us one person. It's going to be someone from finance and someone from customer service and someone from purchasing, someone from manufacturing, someone from engineering. Again, depending on what you're implementing, you would need to provide resources that correlate to the functionality in the ERP system. The other thing with the core team members is we need to get the people you can't afford to lose. We need the A players. We had a client that I gave this presentation to actually several years ago, and the CEO said, "Dave, I hear what you're saying. We're going to provide you 7 people on the core team, and we're going to give them to you full time, and we're going to rent you office space 2 miles from our office so they don't get bothered." And I said, "Wow, I've never seen that." It's very rare to see full-time commitment. It's never have seen where they rent office space away from the corporate facility. So I was very excited about it, thinking, wow, we're going to have a best practice here. And we get the project going, and about into month 3 or 4, I started hearing some rumors, and I did some research, and I found out that these 7 core team members that were fully dedicated, and we had already gone through the design of the system and had started configuring the system as well as testing, found out that these 7 people, the Friday before we started our project, were going to get laid off. And before they got laid off, the CEO told the CFO, "Well, hold on, let's not do that. You remember Dave said he needed core team members. Why don't we just keep them and we'll put them on the project?" Well, I can tell you they were not the people they could not afford to lose. And they were not the A players. And what happened on that was we had to go back through our design and revisit several key decisions that people above them said were not going to work. Again, they let this core team member make decisions, which is important. You want them to, but they gave us the wrong people. So it's important to get the right people. These people need to understand the business. I've had clients say, "Well, I'll go hire 5 brand new people and put them on the project." Well, that sounds good, but the problem is they don't understand the business. See, the key is the consulting firm doesn't know your specific business on a day-to-day basis. While we know your industry, we may not know all the details about your business. Well, we get that by working with your people. Your people know the business, we know the software, and it's a marriage between the two. And these people need to be trusted and respected and be able to make, decisions. There are thousands of decisions that need to be made when you're implementing ERP. The core team members need to be drivers of change. If they don't want to change, they're just going to implement your legacy software. And I tell our clients, why would you spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to implement a new software package only to find out that you're recreating what you already had? You want your core team members to think outside of the box and think of how can we do things better or differently, and be open to suggestions from the consulting firm who's going to bring best practices to the table. These team members need to work as a team, make compromises. You cannot implement ERP in a silo. It is so cross-functional and integrated that you have to work together. And I know some on the phone may not believe this, but I've had many clients where the individuals across departments don't get along. And I have a story that is to the very extreme, but there was a client where the departments did not get along at all. In fact, they didn't like each other. And I had a meeting with an accounting core team member and the manufacturing core team member to talk about costing. And it turned into an argument, which turned into shouting and yelling. between them, not us. And it turned into, finally, they stood up and started pushing and hitting each other. That happened about 10 years ago, and I can honestly say I've never, ever seen that on a project. But I have seen where client team members don't necessarily get along. Well, I can tell you they're going to have to work together because you can't implement an ERP system without working together. The core team members are going to have to get into details. ERP is not a high-level thing. It's extremely detailed. I had a client give me a core team that was good on paper, but once we got to the site, we found out the entire core team were all vice presidents. So they could make decisions, they knew the business and all that, but they didn't even have logins to their legacy ERP, and they were not going to be users of the new ERP. Well, I can honestly tell you they should not be the people driving the implementation. So what that client ended up doing is bringing in the next layer down to be the core team and utilize the VPs to make the critical business decisions, the thousands of critical ones, up front, and then use the other team members to do a lot of the heavy lifting. As I said, this is very integrated, and there has to be give and take between departments. A lot of our clients have 30-plus year custom legacy systems that were customized over the 30 years to give them everything they wanted. Well, with packaged ERP software, you have to compromise and, give and take. It typically is not the goal to buy an ERP packaged software to only tear it apart and totally customize it and to make it look exactly like your legacy system. So understand there has to be give and take. As we say, is these software packages have been around for many years, and the software vendors are always coming out with new releases. Excuse me. And they're coming out with best practices. So we say, use them, don't throw those things away. So that's a little bit on the people. If we jump into the process side, the first thing is a methodology. When you implement an ERP system, you really should have a methodology. That is the approach to and the steps to take to get the product implemented. So Terillium, we have a very detailed methodology, and it's very structured. It's a bunch of tasks and tools and deliverables and templates that we bring to the table. But you should never implement an ERP package by winging it and not having a plan. And that's what the methodology is, and that's one of the reasons you work with a consulting partner. Your methodology really should be flexible. One size doesn't fit all. Our clients, we work with them to say, are there things that you would like to have in a methodology? Are there things you would not like to see? And we'll tailor our methodology, and that is important to be flexible. The next process is training. I've seen many a time where clients will implement the software and they forget one of the key things, and that is training the end users. And I can tell you, if you flip the switch to go live and you haven't trained people, you are going to have a very rough go live. Training is not a one-time event. At the bottom of the slide, it just talks about some of the training steps that we have in our methodology. We train the core team members up front early in the project. We may supplement that with the software vendor training. We go through testing scenarios called conference room pilots, typically at least 3. And those are somewhat training exercises. We're testing your transactions in the software, working side by side with the consulting team. You have your end user training. You're working side by side with our consultants on a weekly basis. So during that time, you're learning. And so it's very important that one of the biggest tasks on a project is training people all throughout the project. One of the biggest success factors that people always talk about is change management. And, it's inherent in all of us that we don't like change. I have a routine when I get up, when I get to the office, and so forth. And yeah, I don't like it when I have to change that routine. Well, think about it. If you've been working on a 30-year custom legacy software, and now we're going through an implementation to a new software that has a total different look and feel. Even small things can cause people to fight change. And this is probably one of the biggest risks on a project. We had a client that we were getting to the end user training portion, and we brought in the shipping clerk, and we were going to train this person. And she came into the room and she said, I got an issue. And we said, what's that? And she said, with the old system, I never had to use it. I just manually wrote down on a piece of paper what I shipped out, bulked that together, and handed it in at the end of the day to accounting. And then the next day, accounting came in and would enter the shipments to relieve inventory and to obviously generate invoices. Well, with the new ERP, that's not how we're going to operate. We're going to have the shipping clerk do the shipments, which is going to auto generate a batch job that will run invoicing at night. And so there's no reason to fill out paperwork. So we told her we're going to make her life easier. She doesn't have to write things down. She told us, well, I've never used a computer and I don't know how to use a mouse. Well, we knew this was going to be a challenge. So I actually had one of our consultants spend almost a week with this person just training her on how to use a mouse, going to Excel, going to the internet. And it was not easy, and it was a struggle. A week later, she turned in her resignation and said that she just didn't see herself doing this and didn't want to have to change, and so she quit. I mean, that is a little bit extreme, but I can tell you people don't like to change. So the key to change throughout the project is communication, communicating to all employees what's going on. It's communicating the project goals. Why are we doing this? What are we trying to get out of it? We write those goals on a big piece of paper and put it on the war room wall. And anytime there's a controversy or an issue or something needs decided, I force the team to go to the goal wall and say, okay, how does this impact the goal? And if it doesn't, it makes the decision pretty easy. Back in the 80s and 90s, a lot of companies implemented ERP, and one of the reasons was to cut cost. And one of the costs they were looking to cut was headcount. They thought they could automate things and therefore save costs by laying people off. We do not see that happen in nowadays. So I encourage our executives that if there are not going to be layoffs, you need to communicate this, because I can guarantee you the employees have heard horror stories from family members and friends and so forth that went through an ERP project back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and someone lost their job. So it's important that you communicate that. Communicate your project updates. What's going on? What successes are happening? Stay positive. The more negative talk you hear out by the water cooler is going to cause people to say, I don't want this thing. And to communicate it to all employees. I mean, I have a client today that they have 12 plants, and their strategy is to implement one plant at a time. Well, if we're on plant 2, plant 12 has no idea what's going on. So it's important to communicate what's going on to everybody and celebrate those key milestones. Another process thing that we see on ERP projects is analysis paralysis. I know clients would love to implement this new ERP and answer those thousands of business questions and get them all 100% perfect in the project timeline. Well, the problem is we find that some of our clients want to overanalyze things. We had a client where they had a specific process of quoting to their customers. And so we listened to how they do things in their current process, and we came back with 3 options on how they could do it in the new ERP system. And we spent literally over a month beating up the 3 different options. And to be honest, it really, if you look back at it, it didn't matter which one they went with. All 3 would have worked. So after a month, we picked option 1. Implement it, and we get to our conference room pilot to test it, and it works. But somebody that was not in the meetings raises their hand and says, that's not going to work, and gave some scenario that happens once every 3 years. And so they all went back and started re-meeting, and they came back and picked option 2. We lost another 3 weeks. So the point is, I tell clients, your 30-year-old custom legacy system, did you build that in 10 months and then never, ever touch the system again? I have never had a client say, yeah, we did it in 10 months and we never touched it again. So I tell them, get decisions made quickly, smartly, obviously, go live, and then continuously improve things. The more you overanalyze, the more money and more time you're going to spend. The last thing is, when you're looking at success factors, or if you're looking at a client that says, our project failed, my first question is, how do you know that? What were your measures? What metrics were you using and measuring throughout the project? And if you don't have key metrics, then how do you know if you succeeded or failed? And so on our projects, the day 1 of the project, we set up key metrics that we measure on a weekly basis. And so at the end of the project, we go to our client executive and sponsor and say, was the project successful? They can't just say, nope, wasn't successful, and just say it without any evidence. So we'll go back and say, okay, well, let's look at the measures and look at them. So keep that in mind if you're going through a project like this and it's very time consuming and costly, you ought to come up with some key metrics. So that's what I had for success factors today. I appreciate your time, and we can open it up to questions, Steve.
All right, Dave. Well, thank you very much for the good presentation. Definitely appreciate all of your experience with these ERP projects and talking to us about these success factors. So I'll remind everyone that if you do have any questions for Dave, we're happy to answer anything that you can come up with. Just type your question into the question panel and hit send. I see one so far, so we'll go ahead and ask Dave this question and get him to answer. And then if you have others, type them in fast and we'll answer those too. So Dave, this question from the audience member references, you said 30 to 60% time commitment for core team. How do we do that if everyone at our company is busy today? Dave, you may be on mute if you're talking.
You're right, I was, sorry. I will tell you, I don't think I've had a client ever tell me, boy, we just got a lot of people sitting around and this will not be a problem. It is not easy. Absolutely is not easy. And there's a couple things that we can talk to people about, and we have. One is we could look at extending the time frame of the project. A lot of times clients will say, I need this done in 6 months. Okay, if that's not a need, how about we expand it to 9 months or 12 months? Therefore, we wouldn't need as much of your people's time during the original project timeline. I don't like to beat around the bush. These projects are hard on the client people. Most of our clients are small to mid-sized companies. So their people are working their normal jobs, and we have to carve out time to work on the ERP project. And that means those people are probably putting in extra hours during the week. So it's not an easy answer. I wish it were. And if anyone tells you that it is, they're lying.
Okay, great. Well, Dave, thank you very much for the presentation today. I appreciate your input. Thank you to all of the attendees for taking time out of your day. I hope this was valuable for you, and special thanks to everyone who joined us all week long. Our team will follow up with you to see if you have any questions or if there's anything else we can provide for you. We thank you all very much for your participation today.